The tricky part is you have to not get boring, right? And this is the struggle with comfort in live game as well, which is to go into get to know you conversation, go into logistics, go into logical topics without making it boring. And how do you do it? You do it by mixing. Thank you, Jafar, for your question. I find it easy to demonstrate value via online game, but how do I build comfort and trust? This is an interesting question, and obviously what Jafar is doing here is he is trying to take this model of value and comfort, which exists in live game and exists in, in the heart and mind of the woman, and he's trying to apply it to online game. And this is a great thing to try and do. In general, when you are learning any idea, or learning any kind of topic or any skill set, take the ideas from one area and try and apply them elsewhere, and try and expand those models, try and use those models, play with and test those models and see where they apply and where they don't. So great idea to take this value comfort idea and bring it into the online realm. And there actually is a very good parallel. Value and comfort do matter a lot online as well as they do in real life. But online is a little different than real life in terms of the modes of communication. So if we're talking about online dating, what builds your value and what builds your comfort, and how do these things all kind of fall into place? And the thing about online dating is, well, with everything, you're building some level of value and some level of comfort. But in particular, you're going to be building value very early on with your profile, your photos, and your first couple messages. That's going to set the tone, and that's going to let the girl know the value you have. And this is similar to real life dating, where a lot of your value is conveyed in the first 30 seconds of the interaction. Once you've made an impression, then you can start building more comfort. And so then the comfort can be built once value exists. And in online dating, it's kind of it's kind of like a false choice or a misconception here or whatever, that you need to keep upping your value while you're talking to a girl. And the issue is this, okay? If you didn't have enough value, she wouldn't be messaging you in the first place. So if your photos were completely awful, and your profile was completely awful, and your first message was completely awful, she wouldn't be messaging you in the first place. And so what ends up happening actually in online dating is that the majority of what you're doing, you do need to keep the tone flirty, you do need to indicate that there's a man to woman aspect, but the majority of what you're doing is assuming that there is some attraction, assuming there is some value, and just building that comfort and trust in order to get the girl on a date, right? And this is where messaging comes in. So your profile, your photos, maybe your first message or those first little bantery exchanges, that's conveying the majority of your value. After that, you are conveying more comfort. However, the tricky part is you have to not get boring, right? And this is the struggle with comfort in live game as well, which is to go into get to know you conversation, go into logistics, go into logical topics without making it boring. And how do you do it? You do it by mixing. You do it by mixing in a little bit of flirtatious or man to woman, or just like a reminder that you're not just, acquaintances at work, while at the same time having a little bit of get to know you conversation, or maybe logical conversation, or a little bit of moving things toward plans and setting up logistics. So a great example of this would be if you look at my model for the different types of texts you can receive and how to respond to them. When you get a text from a girl that is what I call the logical or question category, i.e. she gave you just a logical answer to something, or she's just asking you a relatively logical question, how should you respond to that? Well, the answer is a combination text. You should have part of your text referring to what she said, i.e. Like if she said, how was your weekend? You probably want to say something you did during your weekend. But if she said, how was your weekend? You're like, fun, I did this, this, and this. That's a really boring text. And it's very hard for her to respond to that because she has to dig into your text and find something to respond to, or she has to restart a new topic and generate new conversation. And so that kind of a text is very likely to end up with you getting silence. If she asks you a logical question, you just answer the question in a logical way with nothing else, it's hard for her to respond. It's also not super engaging, or she's not really compelled to respond. And so there's a very high probability she's going to text back silence, or we call that not texting back, right? So that's a problem. So something flirty would be good. So something involving maybe if maybe you had a joke about her being like some kind of clumsy doctor or something like that, right? You can be like, well, nobody accidentally sliced my appendix or whatever. This is a very weird reference I'm making. But the point is you have a teasing thing, and you could say that teasing thing. Now, if you said that teasing thing without the context, right? If she said, how was your weekend? You could be like, well, no doctor sliced out my, well, I mean, this kind of refers to how was your weekend, I guess. So it kind of works. No doctor sliced out my kidneys. the point is, if you had the tease completely out of context, right? So maybe like she says, "How was your weekend?" and you go, "You're such a klutz." It doesn't make sense, right? It's a tease completely out of context. It's a tease completely unrelated to what she just said. Now it seems like you were just trying to throw in that tease, or it seems like you're not paying attention to her, or you're just being overly gamey. So having the tease without responding to the question at all is kind of like building the fun or tension or the premise-y, vibey, moving it forward part, but it's actually destroying comfort because it seems weird and it seems out of context. Just answering the question builds comfort just fine, but it's boring as hell and it's likely to get you silence. And so the right answer is to, your goal is to build enough comfort, build enough logistics, build enough kind of buy-in and agreement on things that she feels comfortable going on a date with you, because that's the end goal in online, or feels comfortable giving you a number if you're going from app to phone to date. So the point of messaging is to build comfort. She already likes you or she wouldn't be messaging you. There's already value there. The thing though is, as you're building the comfort, you have to not kill the value. And that's where guys go wrong, because guys have two modes. They have like teasing, hardcore, harsh, value, asshole text, and then they have like really boring logical text, or they have like flat out just asking or begging for plans text. And any of those by themselves suck, right? You like pure game with no context and no humanity really, really sucks. It destroys comfort. Comfort with no game is really, really boring. And moving for plans without keeping it fun becomes a chore and makes you look outcome dependent. So all three by themselves really, really kind of suck, right? What you need is a mix. And in general, with your messages, each message, when things are going well, when things are going like smoothly and well, but need you to nudge them toward a close, right? When that's the situation you're in those cases, that combo message of a little bit of logical with a little bit of flirtation, or a little bit of logical with a little bit of moving the logistics forward, is the way that you want to be going. And you need to remind the girl. She needs that constant little reminder that this is an online dating site, or at least that you're both there for relationship purposes and not just as friends. I see so many guys in online dating when I'm working with clients and stuff. They'll have messaging with girls and it starts off with like, "Hey, you're cute, I liked you," etc. And then by like 3 or 4 messages in, they're like, "So what kind of food do you like?" "I like this kind of food." "Where have you traveled?" "Oh, I have traveled to here." And they're not talking about each other anymore. And they're not talking about going on a date. And they just like completely gone away from the whole point of why they even got on the site in the first place. And they're just having a casual platonic conversation, right? Not good. Please don't do that. Please don't backwards it. Please don't de-escalate it, number one. But also, I don't think guys are trying to de-escalate it when they do that. They're just slipping into logical, which happens to become boring and happens to de-escalate it. Once you have value, stop thinking so much about value, right? If again, she is messaging you, if she's responded well to your first couple messages, she's giving you a compliment or two, don't think so much about being like, I have to be value. Instead, think about, I just need to keep things like fun and interesting and just a little reminder that we like each other while moving it towards plans. And there should not be a ton of messages going towards plans. That's the other thing, right? So because of this phenomenon that you have value at the start, she already matched with you, she already liked you, etc., and you're going to need comfort to meet up with her, the goal is to get whatever level of comfort you need very quickly and then go ahead and close and get on to the next stage. The longer you go of message, the further distant you're becoming from an initial realization that you have value, and the more you're going to have to actually do things to keep establishing value throughout, which is a hard thing to do. You're making things much harder on yourself. Now, to the extent that maybe you've lost value, or it's gone on and become really boring, or like she seems to be getting a little bit cocky, etc., how do you establish value then? Well, if she's getting cocky, there's a chance she's going to be shit testing you, in which case you have a ready-made conduit for value, which is passing the shit test. That's, when you get shit tests, you should actually be happy, because it's such an opportunity to develop value and to display, that you're a high value guy and have a lot going for you, without having been try hard, without having to inject it in the conversation by yourself, with no risk of being boring, et cetera, et cetera. So passing shit tests is actually a great way to develop value if you're missing it. And fortunately, right, it's very convenient that if an interaction was good and starts going off the rails, it's likely it will go off the rails by her giving you shit tests. And then if you then pass those shit tests, it's going to bump up your value again and keep the relationship going. And in fact, if you sometimes because you were offensive or something like that, but oftentimes if you are getting a little bit boring or losing value, it's the girl's way almost of keeping the interaction working. It's almost doing you a favor, right? So if, for example, it's getting boring and she doesn't shit test you, well, it's going to get boring. She's going to lose interest and you're never going to meet up. If it's getting boring and she does shit test you, she's giving you an opportunity to recover it and make it unboring again. So you should actually be really grateful. She's actually helping you by shit testing you. She's actually like giving the interaction back what it needs. It's almost like it's like, because girls generally can't overtly move something towards sex, or they can't overtly hit on you or overtly be forward, because that's kind of slutty. So sometimes shit testing you in a really boring interaction, or an interaction that was good and has become boring, actually is maybe her way of doing those kind of things. It's her way of managing things back onto the right track. Oh, and by the way, quickly, how to pass shit tests. There are two ways generally, which is misinterpretation or agree and exaggerate, which is just like kind of like taking the frame of the shit test to its logical, absurd conclusion. Typically, misinterpretation works better in messaging than exaggeration does, because it's very hard to convey the level of exaggeration and convey that you mean it as an exaggeration. So misinterpretation usually is the go-to when you're talking about online dating. More on that, I've done tons of material on shit tests. You can check out my other work for that. So I'm not going to go into super amounts of depth here because it would get us off topic, but I will throw that in quickly. That is kind of how you pass shit tests. Beyond shit tests, the other thing that you can do in terms of establishing value is you can do the same types of things that you hopefully were intentionally doing. Hopefully that you got value intentionally from your profile and photos because you were doing it the right way, not just by pure luck. So you can do a little more of what got you value in the first place. So for example, if in your profile you mention something about traveling and being successful, which, by the way, is kind of off topic again, but goes online dating. You shouldn't be bragging about that in your profile. It should be kind of a tangential thing or something that was just mentioned by accident, so it comes off as value but not bragging. You can do the same thing again. So for example, she asked how your weekend was, and you happen to mention that you were in like something happened in a foreign country. Now, the answer was good enough and interesting enough without it being in a foreign country, so it wasn't you trying to brag. It just happened to be that you needed that context, and so it's a little bump of value. It's a little bump of lifestyle value, that kind of thing, right? Another thing you can do is to imply that she's chasing you, or imply the frame that girls generally find you attractive. And again, you don't want to be like flat out saying, well, girls find me attractive. You don't want to be texting that. You want it to be implied as subtext while you're texting something else that is good conversation and good communication. The key takeaway, and again, rounding this all back up, the key takeaway is with whatever communication you have, it's not all value, it's not all comfort. And if it is all of one or all of the other, it's probably not the most effective communication. What you want to do is you want to have that mix. You want to hit that proper ratio for the girl and keep it going. So to take this idea in online dating, right? So when the girl's seen your profile, and first of all, your profile should have some of both. That's just the first part. The profile should have some value and some comfort. It should probably go a little more edging towards value than comfort, because it needs to stand out, and a lot of other factors that have to do with marketing and whatnot. And also because interaction should start on a more value-based level. And then as you're texting, you're going to be building more comfort, and the ratio in your text should be more comfort to value than your profile was, but it certainly shouldn't be 100% comfort, right? So again, the profile, the photos, the original text build your value. The other stuff builds your comfort. However, you need to keep enough of the ratio. You need to keep enough value just being bumped in there that you don't completely destroy it and it doesn't become boring. So hopefully that answers your question. Final thing that I will say, and this is like, with a caveat, I guess. Everything's with a caveat, I guess. But the thing is that time is one of the greatest builders of comfort. And so the more messages you send back and forth with a girl, the more comfort there is. Now, the problem is the more messages you send with a girl in online dating, the way most guys do it, the more boring it is, and the more the girl loses that sense of value for you. And also the more chance there is that something else happens in the meantime, like she meets up with some other guy or she gets off the app or something like that. So while time is one of the best builders of comfort, it should not be your go-to builder of comfort in online dating, right? Now, why do I mention it though? It's because this is a big reason why you don't want to be closing off of the first message, right? It will happen oftentimes in online dating that you message a girl one time and her first response is really positive. And you look at the 4 types of text model and you say, oh, she responded positive, I should make plans. And you're correct based on the 4 types of text model. The problem is if you go for very overt plans after one text, you are so destroying comfort and so looking needy and like agenda'd and like you have an outcome that it's very, very bad. So in that case, even though you're ready to close based on the model and based on her immediate emotions, you probably want to intentionally make your close take a text or two, or you might even want to throw in one more text before you close. If she gives a positive response to that, go ahead and text. So rushing towards the close and just getting eliminating the possibility of any kind of back and forth and any kind of time spent can be problematic. But then on the other hand, too much time just has a lot of logistical problems in online dating. So in live dating, more time equals more comfort equals good. Please just spend more time with a girl. In online dating, that exists once you get a girl in person. It exists maybe once you're on the phone with a girl, but it does not exist in the messaging because so much is out of your hands, so much, can go wrong, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll throw that out, that time is a great builder of comfort. However, it's not the best go-to builder of comfort in online dating. All right. So again, what's the takeaway? You need both. And you need both consistently. You want to keep something of a ratio. You want to keep not pure value, not pure comfort. And then gradually with messages, you're going to be developing that comfort. So the short answer is you message the girl, right? The more and longer and more exchanges you have, and more exchanges you have without offending the girl, more exchanges you have without making the girl uncomfortable, without, sexting in an unwanted way, for example, the more of those you have, the better off you are going to be. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the content. If you liked the question and would like yours answered, or if you didn't like the question, just love my answers, but would like your question answered, there is a way to do that. You can email it to questions@toddvdating.com, or if you are watching this on YouTube, you can put it in the YouTube comments, or you can do both. But that is where I get the questions, is from one of those two sources, either from the YouTube comments or from things that are sent to questions@toddvdating.com. One good reason to send it to the email is that I do prefer audio questions. So if you can record the question, that's so much better. Also, it may be easier to write like a slightly longer question in the email. But either way, you can send me the questions. I'm looking for good questions, and there's a chance that I'll be talking to you directly the next time.